Well, hey there, sports fans. I know what you're thinking, or what you're wondering. Did I just set up the camera, go back out into the hallway, come back in, and take off my trail vest to make it look like I just finished this run and I'm casually sitting down to chat with you? Yes, I did. Am I proud of it? No, not necessarily. And also, I very obviously have a microphone here, so I'm not fooling anybody. Anywho, what I am doing for this video is taking you on a trip through Düsseldorf memory lane. If you know, Mac turning on. If you know anything about me, I moved to Germany about 8 years ago, and my first 3 years were in Düsseldorf before moving over to Berlin. And I'm updating the Nordrhein-Westfalen chapter for the Vater's Essential Germany travel guide. So I'm spending some time out here. I'm in Düsseldorf now, and I thought it'd be kind of fun to go on a Düsseldorf memory lane run, and that's precisely what I just did this morning, starting off from my hotel in the Altstadt, going through some parks up to the first place where Melanie and I lived, right by where I used to work. And then, because I just absolutely loathe the commute, when the office moved further south in the city into Medienhafen, we moved too, because, like I said, I just can't handle a commute, and I wanted to be someplace that was within walking distance or at worst a short bike ride away. And so that's what I did. And so yeah, this morning I actually had to do for my training an hour 20-minute very easy run. And the route I was able to pick, going back up through our old neighborhood, through where I used to work, down some of our old stomping grounds, that just so happened to be basically an hour 20-minute run for me. So what I'm gonna do is bust out the video card here on my Insta360. I'm gonna pop it in and have a look at some of the footage to just kind of give some of my, I guess, instant reactions to the run. And yeah, just take you through Düsseldorf memory lane with me. All right, so I've got my footage here. I'm just going to jump right into it. I started off my run at the Living Hotel de Medici. It is a gorgeous hotel in the just kind of the edge of the Altstadt of Düsseldorf. And fun fact, never stayed here before because I used to live here, but it is also a pricey hotel, and I definitely kind of feel like the schlubby guest because I showed up yesterday, it was hot, and you know, a lot of people, they show up in their cars and they're in their suits with the air conditioning going into air conditioning. Not me. I'm carrying my own bags. I'm sweaty. I'm wearing a black shirt so you can't see the sweat stains, and just being like, hey, one of us clearly doesn't belong here. Probably me. But staff is very nice, very great place. So yeah, thank you Visit Düsseldorf for putting me up in here. Very much appreciated. Started off there. Let's see where I headed off to next. So yeah, started off running by the art museums, and then what I really liked about doing this run is that it really reminded me of all the green spaces Düsseldorf has within the city, because that's something I really love about Berlin, but Düsseldorf has that as well. I kind of always think about the Rhine when I think about what I miss about Düsseldorf and all the little weekend getaways you can do from here. There's a lot more elevation, some great hiking. That's, you know, the tattoo here is basically an homage, if you will, to the Rhineland. But there's a lot of green spaces within the city as well. So from the art museum, I went up through Hofgarten, and that's just one of those little parks that, you know, when I think of Düsseldorf and my time here, it's not something that immediately comes to mind, but as soon as I got there, I'm like, oh yeah, I used to take people who would visit the city. This would be like one of the places I'd be like, yeah, let's go through the Altstadt and then, you know, maybe grab a coffee or an ice cream or something and then go walk through Hofgarten. And it's just a nice little green park in the middle of the city, like so many others in Düsseldorf. And then from there, from Hofgarten, I went up through Pempelfort, which I'm actually ashamed to admit that while I was running for it, I'm like, oh my God, I used to spend so much time in this neighborhood. What's the name again? It's so weird how you can live in a place for 3 years and forget pretty big details like neighboring neighborhoods. Like this was the neighborhood that was right next to where we lived, and it had more stuff than our neighborhood of Goldsheim. So we would walk here all the time to go do stuff. A lot of our firsts in Germany were here, like boring first, like going to the bank and setting up a bank account and just trying to figure out a way. But I remember feeling like I have arrived in Europe because it's got a tram goes right down the middle of the street, Nordstrasse, And I just thought, like, this is what I wanted. This is why I wanted to move to Europe, so that I could be in a walkable place and have trams that are just going up and down the city, and I can hop on if it's got bad weather. I can just enjoy the walk if I want to. This is something that I also forgot about. So I was going up through Pempelfort up into Goldsheim, our old neighborhood, and went into this little park that was right across the street from our old apartment called Frankenplatz. And Frankenplatz is, I mean, it's literally like a block on each side, just a big plot, a square. And it's where we took the dog on his walks for Little John's. We go hang out there, maybe have a beer, just enjoy the greenery. But for such a seemingly small and comparatively inconsequential park, there's just this line of trees right when you get in there, and it feels far more majestic than I think it has any business being. And I love this park so much. And another little fun fact: there's this little building that I'll point out where, let me turn the brightness up a little bit. I've got changing light in here because it's like kind of a cloudy day, and I'm a very pale man, as you've probably noticed, and so I have to kind of adjust the light on an ongoing basis to make sure I don't break the camera with my blinding whiteness, but also so I don't kind of disappear into the darkness when the clouds come up. But anyway, so early on in our Frankenplatz adventures was connecting to the open Wi-Fi that was there, because something we didn't know about Germany is that you have to tell the landlord that you actually want Wi-Fi. So we got here and we couldn't figure out the Wi-Fi, and he said, "Oh, you didn't say that you wanted that." I'm like, who at the time, 2016, doesn't want an internet connection? And we started to learn early on about the myth of German efficiency, because it took like weeks to actually get internet rather, installed. So we'd go out there maybe in the afternoon, in the evening, stand by this grungy little building, hoping to get onto the open Wi-Fi and just check a couple messages from back home. But Frankenplatz was maybe not so loved at that point because we had that association, but eventually just another example of the little pockets of greenery Düsseldorf has. Then after going through Frankenplatz, I did go back down the street right by Rohstrasse 106, where Melanie and I used to live, our very first address here in Germany, and then continued over the bridge. Basically did my old commute to work. So my first job, you had to go over this little bridge, and close to the Rhine, where there was a couple big office towers, and that's where I worked. And I really loved it, not just because it was a really easy commute, but because it was right next to Rheinpark Goldsheim. And Rheinpark is just this gorgeous, beautiful, open park where people come play sports, they'll just come hang out, bike ride, run. It's just a nice slice of green right on the River Rhine. And I forgot, I noticed it on this trip here, but during the summer, they have the Luftkino. It's like open air movies. And they've got that out right now, so you can go do that. That little structure's up. But yeah, so I just continue my run. I actually did that yesterday as well, on a much shorter run, because I just loved it up there. I used to spend so much time there, running around Rheinpark. So I just continued, kind of cut through the park a little bit, got along the river, running back down towards the Altstadt, which something I really do miss about Düsseldorf is it has like a proper Altstadt. Berlin, as much as I love it because of history, doesn't really have one central Altstadt. And Düsseldorf, it was love-hate living here, because there is like one street, Bolkerstrasse, that is where all the tourists kind of flock together. But, you can avoid that and go to some other streets. And the Altstadt is very nice if you ever get a chance to visit Düsseldorf. That's something that is kind of a no-brainer to go check out. Continue down along the river, and then basically after I got past the Altstadt, I was working my way around the Rheinturm to go to Medienhafen, which kind of starts the next chapter the second chapter of 2 of our time in Düsseldorf, going by the obligatory Frank Gehry buildings that, tourist pamphlets and people always like to point out who have some kind of connection to Düsseldorf. And they are beautiful. Like, I love this shot with the Rheinturm and the couple of the Frank Gehry buildings right behind me. Medienhafen was like this exciting kind of new agey place. in Düsseldorf. A lot of new construction was going on there when we moved to the area. We didn't live in Medienhafen itself. We thought about it, but we ended up in the neighborhood next over. But where my office moved down here, and like I said, I hate a commute, so we moved as well to just be a little bit closer. Melanie was still working remote at the time, so it was really easy to just say, okay, let's go someplace else. Plus, as nice as Goldsheim was, it was more of like a family neighborhood. And, you know, well, of course, I consider myself, Melanie, and Moses a nice little family, but it was like, you know, where you live if you had kids, human children. And so it was a little bit on the quieter side. You could go down to Pempelfort, but it was like a kilometer walk or so. We just wanted to have stuff a little bit more right outside our door. So that's why we moved down to Unterbilk. So after I did this little run around Medienhafen, going by my old office, I went up through Medienhafen, kind of like the main street of Medienhafen, where they got some restaurants, the movie theater, like the big movie theater, not like the artsy one. So I went by our old place at Kronprinzenstraße, and now I'm kind of starting to finish up the run. And it's funny. I mean, I don't know, it's funny. It's just how brains work. But when I'm on this run, I'm remembering like, oh yeah, this is where I would turn here, and I did this run all the time. When we lived in Düsseldorf, I wasn't running as much. I wasn't into marathons and ultras quite yet, but I did do some running. And so actually today's run was kind of like a mishmash of runs I used to do when we lived in Goldsheim, and then runs I used to do when I lived in Unterbilk, and kind of put them all together. Also, now I have my nifty little Garmin watch where I can, you know, plan the routes, put them on, and not worry about how to turn or where I got to turn. So I did a lot more of the like same exact routes when I lived in Düsseldorf. Would go up along the Rhine a lot. That was always really nice, just knowing that, you know, if I got to pound out a lot of miles, a lot of kilometers on a training run, and I don't want to think about it, I can just go along the Rhine, just go north, maybe go across the bridge, come back south, and just not think about it. But it was nice to kind of do this mishmash of, you know, places that I used to run and used to spend a lot of my time. So after going up through Kronprinzenstraße, walked by the K21 art collection. Düsseldorf, if you don't know, is a very, at least historically, renowned city when it comes to arts. Andy Warhol spent some time here. Joseph Beuys is kind of like the big name artist who is from here. And if you go even further back, my boy Heinrich Heine is kind of like the big historic celebrity here. He wasn't always, of course, because he was Jewish and was historically like well regarded during his time. But then, of course, when the Nazis took over, his book, actually, if you watch one of those old reels of the Nazis burning books, you can see them throw on top a book by Heinrich Heine. But now, obviously, that's the past, and Dusseldorf loves their Heinrich Heine these days. It's the main U-Bahn station when you're going to the Altstadt. So just continued up through the little park that's by this art museum. Also someplace that I used to spend a lot of time. And then worked my way up to Königsallee. Königsallee is where you see why people call Düsseldorf Schickimicki Düsseldorf. Schickimicki basically means like, ooh, fancy. It has a little bit of a snobbish reputation. Having lived here, I never experienced snobbery, and actually people from the Rhineland will always say that they feel like they're the most outgoing and open of the various different German cultures, and I kind of tend to agree with that in my experience. And in Königsallee, you can see that kind of, you know, extravagant wealth that I'm not particularly a fan of. And the anecdote that people always shared was that you would know when like somebody from some royal family was in town because, you know, they had the big expensive car circling around, stop. Somebody would get out, go shop, come back, get in the car, and then circle around again. But the history of Königsallee, if I'm remembering it correctly, there was a canal that was created down what is now Königsallee, and it was originally named Kastanienallee, which Kastanienallee just means Chestnut Avenue, because there's a lot of chestnut trees that go along this place. But then it was changed in 1848 to Königsallee in honor of King Friedrich Wilhelm IV of Prussia. And they said that they did this because the story I had heard was that at one point when the king was here, people threw horse manure at his carriage while he was visiting Dusseldorf. And that is maybe just one of my favorite historical anecdotes about Dusseldorf, because there's few things that I have an irrational hatred of more than just royalty, or the fact that royal institutions existed and or continue to exist. Just blows my mind. People can be born into that kind of wealth, inbred a lot of the time, and a lot of people just kind of accept like that. That's the way things are. A lot of royal institutions have obviously gone away, not a thing in Germany anymore. But in relative recent history, people just kind of accepted, like, God ordained this family to be like the family with all the money. So I guess that's just what we're gonna do. And obviously people throughout history have rebelled against that kind of thinking, but it just always blew my mind. So that the idea that in this time period in which it could be very dangerous to rebel against a royal figure, I just love the idea that people were grabbing horse manure and throwing it at this king of Prussia, King Friedrich Wilhelm IV. I just love it so much. So well done. My hat's off to you, Düsseldorfers of the 19th century. Mwah, brilliant stuff. And that was basically the end of the run. I just kept going up through Königsallee, turned on back to the edge of Altstadt, and back here to my hotel, where I set up the camera and did this whole charade that I just walked in and kind of jumped in and got started, even though I have a freaking mic tagged on to me. That's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed this trip down my personal Dusseldorf memory lane. Like, subscribe, leave a comment, all the usual YouTube-y stuff. If you're interested in more travels around Germany in particular, you can watch this playlist. I'll try to put it over there. This playlist? Yeah, that playlist of other travels and trips and adventures around Germany. If you're interested in having your own Germany travel adventures, you can contact me. I do offer German travel consultation, help you plan your trips, because I have been all over this country by train, foot, bike. I think I know it pretty well. I'm a German citizen now. So yeah, I'll leave a link in the description for how you can reach out to me about helping you plan your trip. And that's it for this one. You can go back to doing whatever you were doing before, and I gotta shower up because getting ripe.